have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Welcome, everyone. You are in for a treat today. I get the opportunity to have a discussion with Tom Patterson, the guy behind Tommy John. How do you describe Tommy John when you describe it to people?
Tommy John's a comfort-focused men's and women's apparel brand, most well-known for making comfortable, life-changing underwear, bras, T-shirts, and pajamas.
Awesome. Okay, so you can do a lot better than I can.
Yeah.
So, as I get into this with Tom Patterson, I want to just start off with you're a South Dakota kid, so that's why I'm kind of excited to be a South Dakota kid interviewing a South Dakota kid.
Yeah.
So, talk to me just about how you grew up.
Yeah, I'm a small-town kid from Milbank, South Dakota, little under 3,000 people. My parents were funeral directors, and I had that kind of a common upbringing for here in South Dakota, playing sports, working hard, going to school, and all in all, I think the older I get, the more appreciative I am for being a small-town kid.
Yeah, so, as I did my due diligence and I've been following you for a while, obviously people are going to always talk about what you've done as an entrepreneur. But what I like, and I've seen watching you, you've had to be a father, husband, and what you've been able to do as a family unit has been pretty cool because you got to build this company next to your wife, Erin,
Yeah.
which is unique in and of itself. So before we get into that, I want to just take us back just on how you got into this whole lifestyle apparel company.
Yeah, I'll give you the abbreviated version. I grew up and I had lawn mowing businesses. I shoveled sidewalks. I was snow blowing, driveways before school and on the weekends, finding any way to make money as a kid. So I think I always had that entrepreneurial bug. Went to college, and I think the advice was get a 4-year degree, get a job, create a savings account, and a retirement plan. I liked my job. I was a medical device salesman. Think of Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah, great show.
I sold pulse oximeters, these little sensors that measured your heart rate and your oxygen saturation, and I liked it. And then in late 2007, my girlfriend, now wife, Erin, had started a company called Organic Heads, and it was a website that sold a lot of natural, organic household cleaners, different products, and I saw her building this website and building this company, and I thought, well, what's my idea going to be? I want to do something on my own. And every day I'd wake up, Nathan, thinking, what problem can I solve? A better water bottle or a better way to make a men's undershirt is what I ended up getting into, because as a medical device salesman, I always wore an undershirt under my button-downs, which I'm not today. I notice you are. And they'd come untucked, they'd ride up, they'd shrink, and I thought, what if I made what I thought was the ultimate undershirt? And that really set me down the path, but it was really inspired by my wife, seeing her start her business. And then a year into it, Erin got laid off of her software sales job, and she was doing Organic Heads on the side. And I said, look, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. And that's really when Tommy John started to grow.
Okay. Well, all right, so there's something there that I want to pull apart. Entrepreneur. Now, it's a buzzword today, is it not? Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I love to hear people's definitions of what is an entrepreneur.
I think that's the argument, are entrepreneurs born or made? I mean, I would say, I think it's a combination of both. For my instance, I think it was born. I always had this knack for wanting to do things different. And I think at being an entrepreneur today, you have to be okay going down the unpopular path, getting questioned a lot. Is that, well, I don't know if that's the right thing for you long term, and you really need to follow your intuition or your gut. And you're not always going to be right, but I think for me, I was at this point in my professional life where I didn't want to regret not taking a risk later in life when I was 40, 50, 60 years old. And I always knew I just always felt and trusted in God that an idea was going to come to me someday to start my own business. And when it did, I didn't want to be this coulda, woulda, shoulda guy. And I saw a lot of people I spoke to through conversations, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. And I really gleaned a lot of knowledge from people, and I kind of framed, I don't want to be that person. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I don't want to live a life of regret, so I just went all in. And I think being an entrepreneur, the most important thing is you have to get comfortable with uncertainty. There's nothing that's certain being an entrepreneur. It's a roller coaster. It's stressful. It's hard physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And I think you build this muscle over time as an entrepreneur that a lot of people, I think, don't have the chance to develop. And I think now, as I've gotten older and reflecting on it, it was really hard. I think a lot harder than I thought in the moment. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize what they're going through until they're through it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I think it's well said, because I think a lot of times people go, I want to be an entrepreneur because they see the money.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship is about chasing money. Well, I think entrepreneurship, just like you just described, has nothing to do with the money. You had a problem to solve, right? And you had this idea, you wanted this idea, and now this idea came in a very simple going, hey, I'm tired of this shirt running up on me.
Yeah.
So you want to go solve a problem. I think true entrepreneurship is about find a problem and solve it.
Well, and to that point, medical sales to underwear is not a natural transition.
No, yeah.
And I knew nothing about, we knew nothing about clothing, fashion, manufacturing, where to find packaging. We just learned on the fly. And I think because of that, we didn't have bias. We didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
And it allowed us to kind of really reinvent a new way to approach men's underwear and now men's and women's underwear in a way that was fresh, relatable, understandable, and it stood out. And we kind of zigged when everybody zagged, and we wanted to be different purposely. But yeah, that's what a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, solving something personal to them, it's just more authentic, it's more genuine, and I think the personality of the people who started that really comes to life through the brand and through the product, which we have been able to do.
So you know, as I look at going from medical sales, and you brought up Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness. I love that movie, but the resilience that you have to develop, and you had to learn to sell.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you had to. I mean, a skill set you did learn is I better learn to sell. And I know your story well enough that in a business you didn't know much about, to go into the Neiman Marcus's or the different places, you had to convince them that this is a better solution. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that something like 75% of all CEOs started in sales at some point. And I think back, I started in sales when I was trying to convince people in Millbank, South Dakota to let me mow their lawn or shovel their sidewalk. And then in college, I sold cell phones at a kiosk in Fashion Square Mall in Scottsdale. So I've always kind of sold, but then I was selling medical devices with scientific studies. So my skill set actually transferred over really well to underwear. I was now selling underwear, not with scientific studies, but the conceptual selling really worked to my advantage. But I think it's one thing to talk about it, but you have to be able to close. But I think when you solve something so personal to you, you can't fake the passion,
right?
And you can't fake the excitement and the trust, but you have to be able to walk the talk. And I think I was so confident with our product and what it could do, it was really natural for me to position it and go to stores, go to Nordstrom stores and Neiman Marcus stores and train the salespeople like I used to do doctors and nurses, talk to customers like I used to talk to patients in medical sales. So, I think what you learn along the way naturally kind of feeds into what you do. But I like people. I like learning. I've always been a naturally curious person, and I think that's really what sales is. It's pretty simple when you think about it at the end of the day.
So why is there such a negative connotation of sales? People say, oh, I don't want to go into sales, or they have this negative thing in sales. I believe we're always all, like you said, we're selling. You had to sell yourself to your wife too.
Yeah.
As I did, right? We had to get them to buy us.
That's right.
So it's a different perspective or a mindset shift on sales. Why is it that sales comes with a negative connotation from your perspective?
I think there's stories of people being taken advantage of, whether it's multi-level marketing or the used car salesman.
Yeah,
I actually think used car salesmen are some of the best salesmen
I
in the world.
I do too.
To do what they do and to sell things. And I'm not saying you shouldn't give people the context of what could go wrong, but I think there's offensive selling and defensive selling, and I think you have to be have a balance of both and tell them, like, here's what can happen, but here's what also could not happen. And I think it's just being, honest and down to earth, and that's how you build trust.
Yeah.
And trust isn't earned right away; it happens over time. So I think you can read all the books about sales in the world, but for me, the hands-on learning, the trial and error, is the most important part. And I learned a lot of that in medical sales and the jobs I had along the way. I always say the jobs I learned the most in were the jobs I got paid the least in.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
Probably the same for you.
Same thing. I'll never forget my first job. $3.75 an hour at the gas station. And I was also mowing lawns and shoveling. So those are some of the best lessons that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think back, and I'm so glad, and that's one thing I think about today is how can you instill that into your kids. And we didn't have technology and cell phones and all these other distractions that kids have today.
Yeah. So I want you to just transition here a bit and talk about building this brand with your wife. Unique to your story.
Yep.
Right? We hear a lot of great men that do some things and build these companies and start these amazing brands. We hear women do the same thing, but you don't hear a lot about a couple doing it.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
I mean, for me, it's been one of the best things in my life. The brand is Tommy John. My middle name's John. People have called me Tommy since I was in diapers. And my wife, Erin, has really been with me since day one. We were together before we started the business. We were together when we started the business. And we've been together, we don't know any different. And I think we've learned so much about each other, what to talk about, what not talked about, when not to talk about it. And it's not been perfect, but it's the most rewarding thing I've done in my life so far is being able to build a company side by side with her. And it's just a really special thing. And I think, it's really hard to build a business by yourself. And I would say you have to have a partner, one, but, to have someone you trust. I mean, who do you trust more than your spouse? If you don't, I don't know how to think about that, but, they're the person that you confide everything in, and they're going to give you the conversations and the feedback you don't want to hear. It tastes like Sour Patch Kids in your mouth, and that's happened a lot. But along the way, we got to a place where we just gelled in the business, and I think once we figured out how to work with each other, not personally but professionally, that's really when everything started to grow.
So you said you had to learn how to do that. So talk about some of the bumps. I mean, because I suppose you got to learn how to kind of shut it off at times.
Yeah.
Especially now you got kids, so tell me what you've learned.
Yeah. I mean, I don't talk about, we didn't stop talking about Tommy John at 5 p.m. and go to dinner. Yeah. It wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And I think we tried to create separation. I mean, our first office was in our apartment in New York City. So our office was here with a pull-out couch, and our bedroom was here in 500 square feet, so you couldn't escape it.
Right.
But when we did, we'd talk about business on the walk home in New York, and then we'd create like, hey, let's just have a couple hours to work out, to de-stress, take the dog for a walk, and then naturally the conversation creeps back in.
Yeah.
But I think we created kind of different systems that would work for us, like, hey, I don't want to talk about it at 9 o'clock at night and have my cortisol levels skyrocket and get stressed out when I go to sleep.
Yeah.
So I think you learn what energizes you, but also what drains your energy during different peaks. But I would say, like, when I would get burned out in the business, Erin would pick me up. And when she would get burned out in the business, I would pick her up. So I think without each other, I wouldn't be here today. The business wouldn't be where it was, where it is today. But yeah, I think you've got to create systems and rules. But I would say, like, what we did as entrepreneurs, we didn't go to a lot of family events. We missed a lot of our friends' weddings. We didn't go on vacations as much as our other friends. There's sacrifices that we made in our business, and that our business and our relationship were number 1 and 2. Or probably the other way. No, relationship was 1, business was number 2. But yeah, I think in hindsight, I wouldn't say we did it perfect, but I think we did a lot of things right also.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit of a fallacy, this is just my perspective, to how to shut it off. It's hard, isn't it? Especially when you're trying to solve a problem and early on in a business, that's hard to shut it off.
Well, someone said, Tom, how do you know if someone's an entrepreneur or not? And he said, they talk about balance.
Yeah.
And for me, maybe with you, there's really no balance in being an entrepreneur in a business unless you just want it to be like this and not really change. But the world changes.
Yeah.
You have to evolve with the times. And
Yeah. So, okay, I wrote a book because of that.
clearly, I haven't read that.
Okay, but no, because these people were telling me at a point in time in my life, Nathan, you need more balance. You need more balance. And I was struggling with it. I was trying to find, what's this idea of balance? Then I read this book by Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone. And in the chapter of the book was Balance is BS. And I said, now that guy gets me.
Yeah.
So I started looking at it, I go, like, really, balance is a fallacy. Sometimes your family needs you more. Sometimes your business needs you more. So I started looking at that, I go, why can't I be extraordinary in all the areas of my life? Physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, socially. And so, but life is ebb and flowing. This idea of trying to live a balanced life, good luck.
Yeah.
You made me giggle when you said it, so, yeah.
Well, balance and certainty.
Yeah,
right? Like,
right.
there's nothing certain being in business or with kids.
No.
Family, you got to get comfortable just in those uncomfortable moments.
100%.
That happen.
Yeah, it's quite funny. So talk about the Tommy John brand. I just want to transition to that. So you've created this amazing brand. Talk about that journey, because I know that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
And talk about how big is the brand now?
Sure. So we turned 16 years old in April. I think at our 10-year anniversary, I think I read that 4% of companies make it 10 years or longer in business, and I think the fashion business is probably as difficult to be successful as it is to become an actor in Hollywood or an actress. The odds are against you. I'll say that. But when we started, we had a great product, but we didn't have a great brand, and I think any great marketer can sell a product once. I think only a great product can sell itself twice, and especially in this day of Instagram ads and TikTok ads. But 4 years into our business, we got really clear on the company values and also the brand values. And as a brand, we wanted to talk about these uncomfortable truths. Having a no wedgie guarantee, the benefits of a quick draw fly, the end to booby traps with our triangle bralette. So we wanted to be funny and talk about uncomfortable truths. We wanted to be ballsy and irreverent, but we also wanted our models and our tone to have like a sense of humor. And I think we felt the underwear category was very serious. Models not are allowed to smile or have facial expressions and an 8-pack of abs with Vaseline over them. And we thought, how can we make it more fun, funny, relatable, but also have a functional purpose with moisture wicking, cooling fabrics that last longer, they don't stretch out. And when you think about all the attributes, what we were missing was a strong brand, tone of voice, photography. And when we really started to mirror the brand in 2014, we had this commercial called The Big Adjustment. And if you YouTube The Big Adjustment, it kind of showed and highlighted these adjustments guys make in their daily life because they're not wearing the right underwear. And our tagline was Tommy John, no adjustment needed. The underwear doesn't ride up, the waistband doesn't roll over. And that's really, I think, building a brand, what I've realized is it takes 10 years to build a brand. And I think people today have become really impatient, whether it's social media, they want to become an overnight success. I mean, I would argue it's taken us 16 years to become an overnight success. And I think you have to have this, impatient patience along the way. You need to push. You can't be too patient, but you also need to be patient, knowing that things take time to simmer and cook and get to that medium rare temperature where you can eat it and digest it. But I think the brand now it's kind of a moat, right? It's a moat that separates us from other brands. When you see a TV ad for Tommy John, when you see something on social media, the litmus test is if you didn't see Tommy John there, would you know it's a Tommy John ad? And I think more and more that is the case. But I would say the brand tone, the tone of voice, is a lot of the personality of myself and Aaron that come out to it. The fashion industry, we say we're in the fashion industry, but we're not a fashion brand. The Devil Wears Prada, Zoolander is a great movie that we think is very relatable to us. But we just wanted to build a company that people liked. It was relatable. People were nice. They weren't, a-holes to each other. They didn't bring ego into the business. And New York has a lot of that. But we didn't want that. And I think by nature we attracted a lot of people that work with us, but also a lot of customers into the brand that really identified and related to the values that we have as a business and the brand.
And have those values been consistent for 16 years?
No, I mean 100%, no. But I think when they're not, we know they're not because we have strong values in place.
But what I mean, okay, let me ask the question differently. You established those values, but you didn't, hasn't always lived to those values. Is that what you mean by that?
No, I would say we've defended those values.
Okay, yes.
For
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
And you think about like the cultural values. Once we went in and we created our cultural values, we won New York Company's Best Places to Work 3 out of 4 years. The culture really started to thrive. The right people came in, the right people left the company, and I think a lot of success today. You can have a great product, you can have a great brand, but the culture and the people, you can't do it all without that. But you have to have the right people that are supporting and excited and passionate about what you're doing and why you're doing it. What's their why? And I think that's really when it started to change for us. Is about, honestly 5 or 6 years in 2014. That's really when the business started to grow. You know, from 3 to 11 million to 30 million to 50 million to 75 million. Now we're north of 100 million in revenue. But it's been 20-30% growth, being profitable. We don't believe in selling $1 for 30 cents to build a top line number. We've raised money from investors, but we've always been profitable. And I think that's just what our path has been, and what we've been most comfortable with is having a real business that makes money. And there's safety there. There's safety for our employees and their livelihoods, knowing they have a business that isn't at risk of going out of business or needing to raise money to survive. So, but yeah, 16 years in, I think, you know, we wouldn't be there without those values in place.
And so what I hear there is building a brand starts with the people and the cultural elements that you established. So if you define culture, how do you define culture?
Oof. I think culture, for me, it's just a feeling. If you came into a room and you couldn't hear or see and you just looked and just felt the energy, that's what the culture is. And when you walk into Tommy John, people say hello. They're engaging. It's loud. People are communicating. We've got great visuals. It's clean. It's organized. It's comfortable, and it's very inviting. And I think when you walk in, a first impression is everything. When you walk into a business, so the people from the front desk receptionist to the second person you meet when you sit down for an interview, can I help you with anything? Do you know where you're going? A lot of it, honestly, it's based on people Aaron and I interacted with growing up. People that are genuine, authentic, well-mannered. It's South Dakota people.
Yeah.
It's values that we brought here, there into our business. And I think the culture bleeds through everything. And once you have a strong culture, it's very easy to see the people that don't fit the culture. They can't hide. They
Right.
got camouflage on.
Right.
And they can't hide.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people maybe leave because that's not the culture they want. And that's what you want.
Yep, totally.
You want that type of culture. And I would say, like, culture is everything. It can make or break many companies. And I think once brands or companies get really, it's one thing I wish we would have done earlier is develop strong cultural values, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we were able to pivot and turn, and that's really when the business took off.
Yeah, and those values, something we talk about often, like you just said so eloquently, is that they need to attract and repel, right? Attract the right kind of people and repel the people that you don't want a part of your team. So I think that's well said. So talk to me about leadership, okay? We'll close our conversation here. You've seen a lot of great leaders. You've read a lot of great leaders. What are some of the key attributes that you would say are critical for good leaders?
I think they need to be decisive. You know, if you want to make everybody happy, go start an ice cream company and sell ice cream. You have to have thick skin. You have to be decisive, even if it means being wrong. But you also need to get people to buy in, and I think that's where the sales background is really important. You need to have a vision for where you're going. What's the value and they're going to have? Like, what's in it for me? Like, what's in it for them? What's their career going to look like if they come in to Tommy John. And for us, we wanted to do things different. We wanted to be the challenger brand that's going to take on the big global brands like Calvin Klein and Jockey and Hanes. But we're going to do it different, like David and Goliath. You know, we have to be more nimble. We have to be more strategic. But I would say for me, a lot of my leadership skills and personally were developed through my sports background in school as a kid. I always liked the ball in my hands, and I always liked to be the guy that was either going to make the play or not make the play. Not saying that's everybody in a leadership standpoint, but I would say you also have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I didn't like public speaking when I started Tommy John. I got thrown into the fire. And I think there's things, if you want to be successful, there's going to be a lot of things you're not going to be comfortable doing. But what I realized is almost every successful person I met, it had the same thing happen to them, right? And I think you learn that there's a lot of people that are cut from the same cloth. But for me, I really like reaching out to entrepreneurs. I don't really watch movies. I watch documentaries. I don't read a lot of fables and made-up books. I like to read autobiographies because I like to learn what they went through and what they did. And I've always gravitated towards the underdogs, the people that have been underestimated, undervalued. And I think I've been an underdog. We're certainly an underdog in our business, in the underwear business for sure. But I think great leaders some are born, but a lot of them are made. And I owe so much to the people that poured into me, the people that believed in Tom Patterson when not a lot of people did. And there's certainly coaches and teachers and friends that stand out along the way. But no one's self-made. Like people make you along the way. And I think I've really become more aware of that as I've gotten older and tried to pour back into people I see maybe glimpses of me when I was a kid or just starting out in a business. And I'm able to kind of give feedback and advise different people from time to time. And you learn a lot along the way you don't realize you've learned until you see someone in your shoes.
So you talked about autobiographies. I'm just curious about who's some of your favorite people that you've studied or read about?
Oh, Kobe Bryant is I had the opportunity to get to know Kobe before he passed away, and one of the most inspiring people I've met in many ways.
Black Mamba.
Yeah, I mean the Black Mamba.
I mean, he's just I love Kobe. I love Kobe. Yeah.
I mean JFK. Muhammad Ali. And I think what I like about them is they weren't perfect, right? They were works in progress. They had made mistakes. There's only one person that's perfect, and
that's right.
And I think a lot of people hold them accountable to this picture of perfection. So I really gravitated towards the people that were shunned or not given second chances, and society kind of canceled them, so to say, because they're the ones who really struggled, and to come out of what they've came through is just really inspiring. Even, you look at like the Williams sisters or, in what they've struggled. No one reaches success without some level of struggle that I've met.
Yeah, and I think that we always want to talk about the success, but it's about living in the 500 square foot apartment, right? Trying to figure it out, right? Trying to just sling.
That's what you don't see.
Yeah, you don't see all that, right? So, okay, what's your favorite sport?
Oh man, I don't have a standout.
You don't?
No, I like basketball. I like football. I like to surf in the ocean when I can. I like snow skiing. I would say a lot of my sports now have changed into what my kids' sports are.
Okay. Yeah.
And trying to be there with them in the moment. But growing up, it was football and basketball as a kid.
You have a favorite athlete?
Number one athlete, it goes by sport. So I would say Tom Brady for football. Kobe was kind of Michael Jordan to my era. I mean, like a Steph Curry, a Tiger Woods. I think different ones for different sports.
Yeah.
Who's your number one?
Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was my number one, but I'm a huge sports guy like you. I just think there's so much that we can learn from. I mean, in sports, you got to learn to lose. You got to learn to win. You got to learn that really greatness takes place in the shadows, right? When you step on the field, well, what did you do all summer? It shows up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right? But I think all that relates into business, does it not?
What you did?
Yeah. I mean, you got to put the work in. I would say you know why they call it work? Because it works every time, right?
Well, and I think too, a lot of people don't understand, like, why are you working 7 days a week? Why don't you take a break? Why don't you have more, balance?
Yeah.
We loved what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think we were so blessed to find something we really liked.
Yeah.
And we learned about ourselves, and we were energized and excited. You wake up every morning, you jump out of bed.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing worse than having the Mondays. Oh, it's Monday, I have to go to work. Like, I had that feeling, and I know what that's like. But we also know what the feeling, and it's not all roses and fairy dust either. They're tough days, but I think that's how you know when you're in the right profession, the right job, is when that excitement 80% of the time is the same. And for us, that was the case for a really long time.
The word passion comes up a lot. I'm not passionate about it. And as you just were talking there, the word passion still, it gets coined as this blissful feeling. But when we look at the true definition of the word passion, is a willing to suffer for. That's the passion for the Christ.
That's right.
I mean, he sent his son not because it was some blissful feeling. It's like, hey, these guys aren't going to figure it out on their own. I got to send my son, right? So our passion, what are you willing to suffer for? Even this whole idea of only working 5 days a week. Well, the Lord created the heavens and the earth, and he took 1 day off. What have we done? I mean, true.
Right. That's right.
So I think there's just, there's so many things from this conversation, and as you listen to this, I want you to go back and think about it as the components of building a brand. I really took away from those cultural statements. Those values are a big deal. As an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a husband, falling in love with the process, becoming a good salesperson. If you get nothing else from this, you got to fall in love with sales. I hated the idea of thinking I'm a sales guy. Yeah, you are. You better learn the components of that. So there's a lot of great nuggets here, and what Tom also shared with us about leadership. And I want you to go back and think about it. Hopefully you took a few notes, or there's a few nuggets here that you can apply to your own life. So is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? Besides, you're going to be at Brain Spa. So if you haven't registered for Brain Spa and you're listening to this, Tom and his wife are going to be there, so we're super excited for that event coming up in September.
Yeah, super excited. I think just one thing to leave the listeners or viewers with is there's never going to be a perfect time. You're never going to have the best, most perfect business plan. A lot of the learning is done, on the fly. You have to get started, and I would just keep this in mind: 70% perfect at 1 month is better than 100% perfect at 1 year. Because nothing ends up exactly how it's going to be before you start. It's molded along the way, and I think once you get past that, that is one of the toughest barriers to break in becoming an entrepreneur, if that's the path that you decide to go down to.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's fun.
We all have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.